I published a novel last year called Fairytale, the novel. And it's about a modern teenage boy, namely Sean Williams, getting sucked into a cliche fairy tale. And I've read the first chapter of this book on my channel. I decided it was about time I read the second. That was about a year ago. So yeah, that seems like enough time has passed. I'll link you back to the original video down below if you want to watch that. So for those of you who didn't watch the first one, you really should watch read the first chapter before you come on to the second. But if you didn't, what happened was this teenage boy, Sean, got yanked into, he's just an average modern teenager, loves video games, doesn't like homework, and he's a little bit full of himself. He wants to be cool, so he gets yanked through this portal in his backyard into this medieval world, and he just gets thrown out into this, on this mountaintop. There's thatched roofs everywhere. There's these men with beards and axes and swords fighting each other. So that's what just happened. Oh, but when he was yanked into the world, there was this little creature that he figured had pulled him there. And it was this gross, gangly looking creature with skin, clammy, oily skin really close to itself. It was walked on all fours like a lizard, but it was really big like a dog and kind of human looking, but with really big dilated eyes and cute and gross at the same time. That has since been following him around. So let's see what happens to the Sean in chapter 2 called The Manishalo. What the heck was going on? I knew one thing. There were enough shiny, sharp things flying around that someone was going to get hurt, and it could very easily be me. Through the mob of fighting men that surrounded me, I spotted a saddled horse tied beside a nearby forest. I planned to, make a run for it. I'm pretty good at that, at least. Chewing on my lip, I mentally plotted a path through the battle-crazy mob to the horse. Seeing a round shield in the grass, I snatched it up to defend myself. Just then I noticed the skimpy devil who dragged me here, wiggling happily at my heels like he was my dog or something. He looked kind of like a cross between Gollum and an oversized lizard. "What do you want?" I yelled at him. The question is, what do you want? Whirling around, I saw a cloaked figure looming behind me. Hi, I stammered, stumbling a few feet back. Hello? He stood there like an omen of ill fortune, the only stationary thing in the battle swarming around us. His face was shrouded in the shadow of a hood, but a deep, scratchy voice came from inside. Your destiny lies along a dangerous path. Oh, please, I moaned, letting out a nervous laugh. My heart was pounding more than I'd like to admit, and I wasn't too happy about it. Look, mentor guy, I've had enough surprises for... Can you please just tell me where the heck I am and how to get out of here to a place with, less killing? You must discover your own path, treasure seeker. No, I mustn't, I shrieked at the creep. In case you haven't noticed, there's freaking Clash of Clans going on over here, and I don't know how to... I glanced at the war, but when I looked back, he was gone. Oh, great. That's just great. A soldier charged at me, and I gasped, ducking down with a shield over my head, and plunged into the heat of the mob, even though the sick in my stomach told me to turn back. At any moment, those inhuman cries could scream at me, or that square-shouldered dude hacking off another guy's head could decide I was in his path. Crouching lower, I raced through the ruckus, my heart hammering. There was no way I could get through this without getting killed. On the very edge of my wits, I realized it was surprisingly like the time I'd walked all the way from the kitchen to my bedroom with some of my mom's forbidden birthday cake. The lump in my throat plummeted into my stomach as one guy stabbed another guy who fell to the ground beside me. My mind blared. That could have been me. An axe took out the fighter next to me, leaving me in full view of the attacker. Red eyebrows streaked with gray and a bramble of a beard to match was all I saw before running like a coward. I didn't know how to fight. Anytime anyone tried to pick a fight at school, I just shut up and let them do whatever. But here there were swords and axes and pitchforks that would have scared even Indiana Jones. Everything happened so quickly, so many warriors so close, then so far away, then out of nowhere dashing by my path and turned to glare at me. At last I reached the horse and fumbled with the knot that tied the reins to the tree. Why in heaven's name didn't I take horseback riding lessons when Katie did? I reached my foot for the stirrup. The edges of the rubber sole hit the stirrup. It wouldn't fit. I rolled my eyes, grunting. Grabbing the stirrup, I tried to force my sneaker through the narrow space meant for a riding boot. My tennis shoe popped in, and I reached up and grabbed the saddle. Then with a tug, I was up, sitting backwards on the horse. Looking down, I saw the stirrup all twisted and tried to yank my shoe out to start over when one of those medieval mountain men saw me. "What do you with my beast?" he shouted, dashing at me as fast as a bullet. "You can't ride a horse backwards, can you?" I'd never ridden a horse, period. I panicked. Raising my palms, I gave the horse's back the 2 hardest whacks I could. I felt a jolt as the horse jumped forward and felt myself hurling forwards, or would that be backwards, towards the horse's rear. Still in the saddle, I pressed my face to the horse's back and grabbed the tail, terrified of being thrown suddenly to the ground, like they do in the movies, with my foot still stuck in the stirrup. The landscape whirred past in a blur, and after several minutes, feeling both sick and hopelessly silly, I shut my eyes tight. Those 2 smacks I'd given the horse must have been harder than I meant. After riding like this for a good while, I wished for gosh sake the horse didn't have so much stamina. My stomach flipped when the horse jumped over something. My stomach flipped, then the horse jumped over something, leaving my stomach behind altogether. "For gosh sake," I ground out, but then the horse got horsehair in my mouth. I tried to spit it out, but it only made it worse, so I gave up. For gosh sake, I thought, hugging the horse's back end as firmly as the slick fur would allow, shutting my eyes tighter as if that would help. Somehow, it seemed like it did, but the smell of horse was getting nauseating. The hoofbeats beat loud in my ears. After a while, my shirt came out from under my lovely new sword belt. That was not comfortable, especially since each bump of the horse rubbed the leather against my skin. I ground my teeth. Endurance. Tensely, I fingered the horse's hide with my thumb in what felt like a perfect circle. The horse's front legs came down on something hard, jarring its whole back, a loud clomp echoing. It trotted forward, the hoofbeats loud as gunshots in my ears. "Who goes there?" The horse whinnied and halted, and all I could do was slump, so grateful for the stillness, beautiful stillness. Even though I had a feeling it wasn't, I pretended the whole thing was a dream and that the sooner I fell asleep, the sooner I could wake up in the real world. "Are you all right, lad?" Something cold and hard pushed at my back, and I opened my eyes. Another burly face, this one topped with a silver helmet and visor. I'm not sure if I couldn't speak after that wild ride, or if I just really didn't want to. Either way, I didn't say anything. "Beston?" spoke the man next to my ear. I heard the rustle of the leather glove brush the coat of my ride. "There is a brand on this horse." I heard the shuffling of boots against grass and another huskier voice. "His clothes are certainly unusual." I think I heard amusement in the tone. "Odd indeed." Then they shouted next to my head. "It's the Crescent! Wait, why do you have this horse, son?" Another hard push, this time on my leg. This time I sat up and made an effort to speak. White splotches popped in my eyes over the 2 armed men in front of me. My head spun. I got it, I finally managed, feeling like I might topple off the horse at any minute. The first man who'd spoken, who I now realized was a lot thinner than the other guy, lifted my sword sheath and glanced at it. His eyes widened. "The sword! It's from Vidron." I meant to tell them what happened, the whole truth and everything. When I opened my mouth, the smack of my lips was loud enough, but then all that seemed to come out was, "Gave it to me." The white splotches were dancing all around, and I stiffened my neck to keep from flopping to one side. Realizing something of my condition, the second knight leaned forward. "War?" was his short question. I nodded and tried to think. The man there told me to fight." I was mouthing words then with no sound coming out, though I'm not quite sure what I was trying to say. I shut my mouth and with a deep breath managed to kill most of the splotches. There, I was getting a grip. A loud creak interrupted the interrogation, and I turned to see that I was next to this huge wall that stretched on forever. 2 metal gates as tall as churches were set inside, and were now swinging open slowly. Trying to focus on them, I saw 2 figures in dust-colored cloaks stride through the gates. One of them darted its hooded head my way and rushed towards me. As the hood's figure was thrown back, the cape flapped open to reveal the prettiest, skinniest girl I think I've ever seen, dressed in a laced, trailing yellow gown with a captivating, determined face framed in silky golden curls. "Who is this Randian?" she asked with a rippling voice. Her father left his face and figure in shadow. "A young man from Fidron," answered the man who had first greeted me. He bowed to her, then he turned to me. "And this young lady, stranger, happens to be Princess of Glynstor." I nodded, not sure what I was expected to do. Suddenly I didn't care. Pain jolted through my body. I gripped the horse's back, leaned over, and puked on the ground. I know nothing about official royalty greetings in this particular country, but I have a feeling that wasn't it. The 2 warriors yanked my shoe from the stirrup and helped me clumsily off the horse. As I rushed off, supported by the thin guard, I heard the others speaking to the princess. "Quite an odd young man. He brings news that war has broken out between Fidron and Dune. We must make haste to support them after strengthening our own walls," the girl reasoned. "Fidron would not have started warring on light causes. They have little in the ways of defense." Immediately after passing through the gates, I realized it must be an important city we had entered. High towers of beautiful stone stood spread out among royal buildings of ornate wood and metal. At a lower, less proud-looking stable, my escort entered and released me from his grasp, lifting the metal latch to a black mare's stall. After laying a brown blanket over the animal's back, he planted a saddle atop that and tightened the cinch. I shook my head, though the man wasn't looking at me. I'd rather have stayed in that barn all night than get on another horse's back that day, or any day for that matter. Feeling faint, I leaned against the doorpost of the stall and let myself slide to the ground, wrinkling my shirt behind me. "Nope." I shook my head, crossing my arms to make my point. I felt hours-old horsehair still lurking in my mouth and tried to spit it out into the straw-strewn dirt floor. "I beg your pardon." The guy said it like he was actually sorry and was therefore asking pardon. I didn't realize before that no one back home said it like that. "I just said I ain't getting on that horse. You can drag me and you can torture me, but I'm not riding another horse today." The man creased his forehead. I assure you, sir, Merriman will ride as smooth as her silken blanket." "And I assure you I'm not going. I've had enough jostling around to last me." I felt a gurgling feeling in my stomach. "Anyway, it's final." "But, sir, I intend to take you to the King's Inn. His Majesty will want to speak with such a..." The man paused, and I looked up to see that he was searching desperately for a kind word. "Distinguished," he concluded at last. "Distinguished young guest." "Distinguished?" I grinned. "Well, that's a convenient word." I beg your pardon." I waved it off. "Forget it." The man nodded slowly. "Indeed. Well, perhaps if I were to..." "Look," I said, rising from my seat in the hay and rubbing my forehead. "If you're so insistent that I go, we better just walk. I personally feel more like dropping into the floor right now and sticking this whole stupid day up that horse's mouth." The man raised his eyebrows. But I'm not gonna get any sleep while you're sitting here trying to get me to go with you, so I might as well just come along and save us both a lot of time and trouble." "Correct." The man didn't look so sure. "In that case, I shall lead the way." I motioned to the stable doors. "You know it better than I do." The man nodded again and walked toward the stable entry, glancing over his shoulder at me. A startled light filled his eyes, and he sheepishly retraced his steps back to the mare's stall where he unsaddled her. It was dark before we reached the King's Inn, and every muscle I knew I had throbbed. The warrior escorting me turned the handle, and the stained wooden door swung inward, revealing a bright lobby with delicate high ceilings and doorways. Long tables of light wood draped with fancy linen trimmed in gold, set with silver candlesticks, stood in the middle of all the open, airy rooms that I could see from where I stood. The entire setting seemed to be centered around a counter that held jeweled goblets and silver platters. Behind the counter, a man with a trimmed beard, wearing clothes similar to everyone else's except brighter and newer, was shining a goblet with a cloth. Laying his gloved hand on the back of my t-shirt, the guard led me toward the bar, where I leaned my bare elbows on the cold stone counter and dropped my head down on top of them. "By the stars, Ranjin," came the hoarse voice of the bartender. "Who and what is this lean creature?" I felt an abrupt rap on my shoulder by my escort, as if he could stop the bartender's words. "Anklin, this is a new arrival from the battle waging in Vespin. He has ridden long and hard to bring us this news." Not really true, but I didn't see the need to point out their mistake. "He is not up for questioning yet. He needs a good room, hot food, and the best wine in the king's stock." "I didn't hear about a battle." The bartender sounded like he should have heard the news first. "There is no time to discuss it now," Ranjin explained. "Deliver victuals to the boy's room. I shall put him in the southwest wing, above the ground." The sores on my stomach started stinging again. "Is there anything more you require?" Ranjin asked, turning to me. "Yeah." I craned my neck up and leaned on the counter to look at the guard guy. "You got any Tylenol?" The guard and bartender looked at each other in confusion. The food was really good, and the room was beautiful. Carved walls painted with gold, blue, and purple. I don't know how the wine tasted. My mom and dad made me promise not to drink, and I thought the whole idea disgusting anyway. The wood-framed bed that took up most of the room was as comfortable as heck, and I was super tired, but I couldn't sleep. I rolled my eyes. Should have known I wouldn't be able to. Where was I anyway? I felt so restless inside, and thinking wasn't getting me anywhere. Besides, I wanted a shower. Getting up, although my body complained, I walked over to the tall glass window and sat on my knees, looking out at the pitch black that hung there. I wondered if the window opened, but I didn't want to mess with it. All I wanted to do was be still and think. It's like my mind wouldn't form reasonable thoughts or sentences. Finally, I spoke out loud. "Here I am!" Somehow that seemed to help, so I went on. That little devil was on the tip of my tongue, but it obviously wasn't intelligent enough to know better. Guy dragged me here through something, and now I'm clearly somewhere from the past, or somewhere that certainly looks a lot like the past. Glinsdale? Did that guy say it was? I waited in silence for a minute. Yeah, so I slapped my knees and got up to go back on the bed. Great. That's where I am, and that's how I got here. Yeah, here I am, so... Trying to pretend this little dialogue had fixed everything, I rolled into bed and soon fell asleep, oblivious to the crazy, whacked-up world I had just dipped my toe into. I slept great, no weird dreams or disturbing sounds or anything, until a cold tickle brushed my arm. I snorted and brushed it off. The tickle came again and broke into my hazy state of semi-consciousness. Go away, Katie. As my head cleared, I noticed the tapping was on my hand, and it was slimy. A chill slithered up my back, and I shook it off. What is it, Katie? It wasn't like her to come into my room like this. Maybe the house was on fire or something. Sitting up, I saw two huge eyes staring an inch away from my face. I screamed like a girl, but stopped myself mid-scream. Don't be a sissy, Sean. The creature from that morning stood on top of me on the bed, cocking its huge head. You're a Martian, I thought. You don't belong in a fairy tale. His bony, slimy hand reached forward and suctioned over my mouth. I have to admit I was a little scared as I tried to wrench his hand from my mouth, but found the suction too strong. He grinned his little mouth at me. I tried swinging a fist at the little devil, regretting being so soft on him earlier, but the dude's arms were longer than mine, and that kept him out of reach. After trying desperately to whack the guy for several minutes, I stopped for a breath through my nostrils and nodded my head several times. The monster's happy little tail swayed to and fro as he kept his hand over my mouth. Nodding a few times more for good measure, I threw the covers off and got out of bed, ignoring the creature as it scrambled in a panic. It clutched with its free hand at the collar of my once bright t-shirt and tried to cram its toes into my jean pocket to keep its balance. Failing to find footing quickly enough, it hung to my collar, its hand still grasping my mouth. Coolly, I strode to the doorway, twisted myself to the left, and rammed the dangling monster against the doorframe. The creature dropped to the floor, shrieking and whining. Immediately, light flickered down the hall and calls sounded. Hoping to lock the guy outside my room, I thumped my hand against the side of the door and swung it closed, but the rascal dashed past me and into my room as the door slammed. I turned and stared at the happy creature, dipping its scrawny back in and cocking its head up. With a sudden lunge, I grabbed it by the shoulders and pulled it off the ground towards my face. "Listen, what do you want?" I shook it and clenched my jaw. "Rawr," was the screech it made for a reply. Lowering it, I sighed and threw it to the ground. My door burst open as Randian, the guard from last night, and the bartender, now dressed with a nightshirt and holding a candle, stared into the room. The moment called for a second's hesitation, then Randian straightened to a more dignified pose. "What happened here?" he asked. Before I could answer, the bartender stepped forward as though about to address me, then turned his head to the guard. "You did not tell me he was a treasure seeker." Randian shook his head. "I did not know it." "I'm not," was on the tip of my tongue. Then I realized it might be better to wait and see what it meant to be a treasure seeker. I was in a strange place, after all, and could never know when some kind of leverage might be useful. "What's it to you?" I finally settled on, holding my chin high. The guard peered at the creature in confusion, extending his hand toward it. "But I saw no such creature when I escorted you hither." "Indeed," I nodded. At a loss for words, the man looked from the creature to me and back. "But how did you conceal such a thing?" I faked a defensive expression and planted my fist on my hips. "Are you calling my friend a thing?" "No, indeed," hurried the guard. "I am simply at a loss to explain the sudden appearance of such a..." Once again his face twisted in a desperate search for a polite description. "Obvious creature." "Ah, I beg your pardon?" The guard tilted his ear forward. I nodded. "Pardon granted." At this point, the bartender thumped his one fist atop the other. "I am not sure I feel safe with a Manishalo in the building. Do you promise to keep your friend under control, stranger?" More nodding. "In a sense," I said casually. "He isn't my child, but he has no intention of hurting anyone. He's a perfectly well-meaning fellow." In harmony with my statement, the creature grinned its naive smile and let its tail sway in contentment. With a doubtful look at the guard, the bartender started to go, then he looked sharply back at the guard. "I am still holding you to your oath, Randian." The guard nodded solemnly. "Certainly, sir." After watching the bartender leave, he turned his worried face back to me. "Please, cause no harm to us. If there's anything you require, my room is the one to the right of yours." I nodded calmly. "I understand." The guard backed out and shut the door and shut it quietly. "Not," I muttered, and I thumped my hand to my head. Having a thought, I grabbed a nearby dresser and scooted it in front of the door with an effort. Leaning against it, I panted and glanced at my sword sitting in its belt over the back of a chair. I walked towards it, keeping my eye on the Manishalo, until I reached the sword and pulled it out of its sheath. The rasping was louder than I expected, and the sword heavier. I focused on not dropping it. Couldn't let this little guy see I didn't know how to handle it, if it happened to be that smart. With a trembling wrist, I held it towards the creature. It shied, but didn't move from its spot. You... What did I want to say anyway? "You dragged me here, so I know your trouble. Why do they call me a treasure seeker?" Yeah, I knew I couldn't respond, but I had to ask anyway. "Anyway, you'd better not cause any more trouble, because I've got this. Got it?" Maybe it couldn't even hear. "I don't even know where I am, but you better help me out of it. I'm a real tough fighter. Stay on my good side and maybe I won't hurt you." There. If it could hear, it had heard that. If it couldn't, no one had been there to see me make a fool out of myself. What's-his-face said we're going to see the king tomorrow. You better behave. It perked up, tapping its feet in excitement. So I placed the sword back in the sheath on the chair, then after a second thought, took the whole thing into bed and slid it under the covers. I could never be too careful in a place like this. And that's the end of chapter 2. Such nostalgia. Like, Sean, he's evolved into his very own character. When I started writing this book, I had no idea who he was going to be, except your average teenager. He's definitely developed a lot from there into becoming his own person, and a very unique, I don't know, he does his thing, and I follow along as fast as I can type. hey, tell me what you thought of chapter 2 of Fairytale. Tell me what you think is going to happen next. What do you think is up with this whole little guy? Do you think the little Manishalow's dangerous? Do you think he's cute? Do you think he's awful? Do you like Sean? Do you just think he's a jerk? Do you think he's cool? Do you think he's kind of a cool jerk? And what do you think of Randian? Randian's actually personally a favorite of mine, even though he wasn't in a... Well, we'll see how far he goes into the book, but yeah, tell me what you think of this. Currently, this book is for sale on Amazon.com or Amazon CreateSpace. I have a link to it in the description, and I'm currently writing the sequel, actually, which involves a girl. So, tell me what you think, and thank you so much for watching. In the meantime, until I see you again, never forget that we are epic heroes today and every day of our lives. And I will see you in the next video. Oh, also tell me if you want me to read any more chapters of Fairytale on this channel. If you do, tell me. This is the song that runs under the credits, and these are the credits, so this is where it goes. It has nothing to do with the movie, so we'll say, hey, 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 hey. Credits Big Idea Productions, 2000 and something.